Hi, welcome back to Maxim's Inside Track. Hope you've all been keeping well. Still living in a very interesting world at the moment. The GDT last night was relatively solid, a little bit of a mixed bag, but still at high numbers. In looking back at history, we saw about an 18-month run between 2013 and 2014 with really high and solid dairy prices. It feels like we're a couple of months into this solid cycle. So the question is now is how long will it run for, and will it remain at these high numbers for an extended period of time? Very difficult question to answer. We've got COVID challenges still around the world. You see Singapore and Japan experiencing some pretty significant numbers and deaths. That mix will continue on whilst EU and vaccines roll out and Australia taking their time to do so. But I think COVID will continue to impact the world and travel and to a degree dairy demand. There's talk of inflation and whether interest rates look to firm and what that does for consumer spending and demand on dairy products. We're seeing corn prices at 9-year highs, so that's a significant input into American production in particular, and what this does in terms of profitability for farmers, even at high milk payout prices to the farmers. If their input costs go up, it doesn't encourage them to supplementary feed, and in particular in the States may not make them profitable. So these we've been up about 1 to 2% milk flows around the world, and this may peter out or balance out, and if that does and demand continues where it is, we're going to see these solid prices for some time to come, but that'll remain to be seen. The Australians or the Australian producers are starting to come out with their opening milk prices for new season. These are starting to look pretty solid. Or with a 6+ in front of it, so that will be profitable for Australian farmers. It's just as to how it steps up from there. On to whole milk powder now, really a China story. Demand from that particular region very high. They do have increased internal milk flows, however that's been absorbed internally through liquid drinking milk and yogurts predominantly, and then there's demand on top of that for imported product. Their currency is still strong to the US, and demand remaining high, still touted as a very nutritional product by some significant influences, health influences in that market, and demand continuing to be there for imported product, even at sort of US 4,000 plus numbers, still buying. NZ milk flows are remaining solid through the winter period, and looks like they're going to be okay for the start of the season thus far. So milk flows in NZ looking reasonable. Just demand out of China extremely strong for this category. Moving on to skim milk powder now. Positive result on the GDT, just up under 1% on that platform. Skim demand globally has remained reasonably buoyant on the back of quite firm protein prices. We've seen Mexico increase demand, in particular from America, heading south into Mexico. EU supply is relatively tight and shortish for the moment, with firm dollars out of that region. You can access Oceania product at around about GDT type levels. We've still got logistics challenges around the world, and we don't really see these abating until probably a bit later on in the year. There's talk of sort of August, September, October before any sort of normality comes back into this. So that's been a very extended period, which also would have increased demand, with people buying a little bit more forward than what they traditionally would need. So that's also adding to the demand of dairy and keeping these prices strong. I see skim relatively firmish, once again out for the next quarter, depending on supply out of the EU and the US. Moving on to the fats now, butter and AMF came off slightly, butter in particular 2+% on the GDT platform, and AMF to a lesser extent. We're sort of seeing this per kg butter fat between AMF and butter coming further back into line. There was an anomaly on that GDT. August offtake was up 3+%, about a US $440 per tonne premium to the other months. So there's obviously a couple of bidders that were bidding against each other to secure product for that period. They are still good fat numbers, however I'd suspect under a little bit of pressure. We have seen US pricing starting to firm up, however still competitive, just that logistics challenge of getting it out of the US, and European prices are very stable, solid, and may track sort of sideways to firmish out of that region. So yeah, butterfats reasonably stable-ish with a tone of slight weakness on the back of that. Yeah, I'd suspect that they'll drift off slightly from here. China was a significant offtake off this GDT for butter in particular, so there's obviously an insatiable demand at the moment for any dairy product up into that region, and interesting that there's such significant players on butter or demand for butter, so they're obviously assisting in keeping this pricing firm. Moving on to cheddar now, or the cheese category. Yeah, pretty flat result on GDT. Starting to see stable-ish sort of prices out of the US. The last sort of 2 to 3 months has sort of tracked sideways. Getting back to a little bit more of normality. That lunchbox or government lunchbox program has ceased. Retail demand starting to ease off, whilst food service demand starting to lift. So getting back to traditional offtake within that US market. So the only challenge is milk flow in the US is still really strong, anywhere from 1.5% to 2.5% up depending on region. So and that's even with increasing corn prices. So does that burn off as these inputs go up? You'd think that it would have to, but yeah, let's wait and see what happens on that front. EU prices are stable-ish to firmer, and Oceania similar. So it feels like this cheese mozzarella category is pretty balanced from a supply-demand point of view. On to the carbohydrates now, whey, lactose. Once again, China, a significant player in demand on the demand side, up about 60% from Jan to March on last year in terms of inputs of whey powder into that country. So most of that is for the swine herd or repopulating that swine herd, and then you've got lactose demand is still solid. The only challenge is some of that higher end infant demand for pharmaceutical grade and infant grade is probably being challenged a little bit, just as that demand out of China softens a little bit for infant formulas. But this category I suspect will remain pretty solid for the next 3 months at least, and then we may see some easing in the latter part of the year. Thanks very much for listening to Maxim's Inside Track. We look forward to servicing your needs for dairy if you need anything, and stay safe. We'll see you in a fortnight. Thank you.